Good evening. Welcome to the Fright Files. My name is Chris Harmon, but you can call me Dr. Fright. We have all new stories in store for you tonight. Madam Mina is also going to be joining us. Before we begin tonight's festivities, or should I say tonight's Fright Fest, I must ask everyone to look inside themselves and ask a very important question. Can you withstand till the end? Welcome. Welcome as we begin our journey through tonight's Fright Fest. This is sure to be a most frightful evening, and we already have Fright fans in the chat saying hello. Hello to everybody watching around. Hello to everybody in the chat. As we begin our first story, warning you these stories are not for the faint of heart. Only the bravest souls can make it all the way to the end. As we delve into our first story, the Ravens. The ravens are curious creatures. They hunt for food as we do. They solve problems as we do. They even entertain themselves as we do. But some are unlike other creatures. Some just watch. They observe. They learn. They wait. They sometimes wait for centuries just to be human once more. As the witness goes, I moved from China in August for a postgrad, being unsure of what a small town in the west of Iceland that's so far hidden that even the ring road, which goes around most of the country's premier, was at least 200 miles road, which goes around most of the country's perimeter was at least 200 miles away. But it truly is the century's hidden gem. Being that far north, however, the sun never sets in the summer, so midnights are as bright as middays, but the winters are quite the opposite. I started out for a local tour company. Mostly I would be on the bus for tours and cruise ships for tours. I would talk on the microphone as the driver took us all around the valleys and over the mountains, sometimes to Freebay's farm to play with her sheep. My favorite tour was the Dinajad waterfall, where we would always pass by the majestic hydrogenic power station run entirely by Westfall's green energy, plus a limitless water supply, means that every household comes with a washing machine, dryer, and a dishwasher, a luxury every student dreams of. There's only one set of power lines in the entire Westfords, which runs along the and over the mountains, providing power to all 7,000 of us scattered about in villages and other small towns of barely 1,000 people. Often the winter storms do some damage, so we get our fair share of blackouts until the lines can be fixed, or sometimes starts up back up diesel generators. Now, my favorite story to tell would be about the Uteber in the olden days. Uteber, if a mother could not care for her newborn, she would abandon it in the lava fields. The child would return as a Jupiter, a lost spirit taking the form of a raven, lingering in the lava fields, waiting for unsuspecting travelers. There is a sad truth to the legend. Ravens are clever and curious creatures, and they often like to mimic the sounds that they hear. Like water drops, car horns, or even mimicking someone shouting. So when they would find a baby abandoned in the empty fields crying for their mother, the ravens would mimic those cries as they flew all the way back to the village, perhaps to summon the villagers to the body's old. Sadly, there wouldn't be anyone to care. You see, ravens are such fascinating creatures. The thought of leaving about these intelligent beings really excited me, so I wondered and wanted to study for my finals thesis, even despite my boss's warning, beware of the ravens who watch. She said at the end of my tour, she was telling me at the end of my tour to beware of the ravens who watch. At first, I thought she was trying to be funny by adding to the spooky atmosphere, but then there was something about her tone suggesting a hint of sincerity. You see, I hadn't given it more thought until the very last days. The final cruise ships departed before the winter come. It wasn't it was when I was discussing thesis ideas with others, classmates, that noticed my boss went very pale. She suddenly seemed disconnected by the conversation. I asked if she was all right, but she leaned in very closely and asked, are you absolutely sure about studying the ravens? And I told her it was only an idea. My topic may change. So I asked her again why she was so against this idea, but she only replied, beware of the ravens who watch. This time I asked what she meant by that. She leaned in closer once again as she put on arm around me and whispered, people disappear when the lights go out. Not far too long. Everyone here knows everyone. We're all practically related. So, of course, we'll realize someone is missing, but just long enough that they won't be noticed. But the ones who come back, they are not the same people who leave. So, what does this have to do with ravens? I asked, confused, but she merely shook her head to put on her coat. That's why I never stay over the winter. You see, she chuckled, I lavishly, and I hate and I would not live anywhere else. But I go to the waterfall to stay with my mother. I hate the city. I really do, but I don't want to be taken away like the others. She gave a cackling laugh, a laugh someone who only 3 hours of sleep would give. But she drove off into the evening dusk. You see, Carla was one of those Icelanders who claimed the elves and the hidden people spoke to her. She was someone who never slept more than 4 hours a night. She ran marathons for fun and lived off nothing but protein bars and black, solid black coffee. Coffee strong enough to keep the average person up for 3 days straight. But she had a point about the winters here. As winters come, as winters came, we lost daylight at a rate of knots. The sun would be so low in the skies that it would stay hidden behind the mountains, and after seeing the final November sunset, we would be left at the mercy of the darkness until the spring. Still, there were enough Christmas lights to make the town feel cozy and homely. I hadn't given any more thought about Carla's warning until I met that boy. Until I met that boy. I later got a winter job as I later got a winter job, an after school coach for 5 7 years. There was one child, however, who stood out to me. Get on the he never did get along with the others and would often be almost disturbed by everything they did. In fact, I had to call his mother when he got violent one afternoon. He got so violent one afternoon, I thought she would give me the whole spiel of how he wasn't normal like this, and she would deal with him when she got home. But instead, she gave me a question. She asked me to be a bit more forgiving, please. He hasn't been himself for the past year, she said. Not since the blackout. Now remember, I asked her what she meant. She looked down, trying to find the right words to tell me in English. The winters here are dark. You have not had your first blackout, but it is a darkness like you have never experienced. Sometimes it's distress so badly people change, but it's not like trauma. It's like they are another person. They lose memories, forget friends and family, and forget how to do simple things like drive a car, make a phone call, or even turn on the shower. I asked her if there were others like her son. She said there were, and sometimes they change for the better. Angry and moody people would often become more relaxed and friendly, but aside from acting creepy and possessed, they all had one thing in common. They would all be missing for a few days after a blackout. Now, remember, aside from acting creepy and possessed, they all had one thing in common. They would all be missing for a few days after a blackout. Key words after a blackout. I told Trevor about it on the way home. He didn't seem to care. He was too busy complaining about the latest assignment, but I wasn't listening to him either. I suddenly felt very disconnected, like a dog sensing a storm in the distance. Something felt off, and I looked around but only saw a few passers by and some birds, gulls and ravens. I remembered Carla's warning once again. Beware of the ravens who watch. Beware of the ravens who watch. Now, Trevor's attention shifted away to say goodbye. He wasn't the most self aware and didn't realize just how loudly his words echoed in the form. But I could have sworn one of these echoes was strongly distorted, as if it hadn't come from the mountains echoing, almost as if it came from the ravens mimicking. Trevor, it made me remember the stories of the unholy again. Ravens mimicking cries of the dying newborns abandoned in the lava fields. It all happened on our first blackout. Why, I remember that darkness of the night when the lights faded all at once. It happened roughly just before midnight. The darkness was nothing like I'd ever seen before. The skies were empty. The air was oddly still. It was as if the town had been swallowed. All I could do was make out All I could make out were the faint silhouettes of buildings and mountains, barely illuminated from the trickles reflected by the snow. That's when I heard it, a soft knocking, only it wasn't a knock in the usual sense. It almost sounded like something pointy and sharp, like a cone or a ski pole tapping against the wood. And I wanted to use the light from my phone to move about, but I forgot where I had left it. As I fumbled about the darkness, searching for the only light source, the knocking sounds grew more frantic and sharper, but I still couldn't find that damn phone. Little did I know that my missing phone had saved my life. As the knocking grew more frantic, I stopped searching and instead rubbed my hands against the walls, feeling my way towards the door, and gently I scanned my hands against the grooves between the wood and metal of the door frame until I could feel the cold metal of the handle. But just as I had placed my hands on it, the knocking had suddenly stopped. I tried to look through the window to see if I could make out anyone outside, in case it was a neighbor who was locked out of their home, or if it was just something stuck to the walls that had blown into the wind. But I couldn't hear anyone, and the night was still quiet. Not a whisper or a breeze could be heard. I looked through the door window, but couldn't make anything out but the silhouettes of the building. So I turned to head back to my room. Then I heard it again, only this time it came from across the road. I peered through the window once more, but still I couldn't make anything out. From across the road where Trevor lived, I heard the door open just as the knocking became more frantic. I thought I could make it out. I thought I could make out Trevor holding a small light in his hand, or illuminating a small circle around him. The light pointed in my direction, but something was blocking the beam. Something had emerged from the ground, and from its shadows grew a shape that almost seemed like human. Almost as it rose, it seemed to unfurl something along its sides, like a bird expanding its wings. All of a sudden, it swiped. forward at the house, and the faint light that was casting its shadows had disappeared. Almost immediately, the lights come on. It always takes a while for the diesel generators to get going. In theory, people could take that time to appreciate the stars or even the northern lights if they were out, but the Icelandic skies were always so littered with clouds and mist that it was rare to catch such sights. Now I tried to scan the area to figure out what the mystery figure was. I slowly paced forward outside towards the other house, looking for the mystery creature, but there was nothing. Strangely, though, Trevor's door was left wide open, so I walked inside to do some investigating and was greeted by Trevor's housemate, but Trevor himself was nowhere to be seen. Now I thought I had gone on a midnight walk to enjoy the dark sky, but it was only as I left the house that I noticed something sticking out of the snow, a single black feather. Now Trevor didn't turn up too close the next day. We first thought that he was ill, but his room always seemed to be empty, and after a few days we considered telling someone. The lecturers, the police, mountain rescues, anyone who could shed any light on why he had just mysteriously disappeared. But I was against it because of what I saw later that night. And I would like to welcome Madamina into the studio as I finish this frightful tale. Hello, Madamina.
Hello.
I hope you're enjoying this frightful tale.
Yes, I am.
You see the lights illuminated a silhouette dancing at the ledge of the summit. I couldn't be sure it was a person. They moved in the most controlled, contorted way like a minuet pulled by a child who didn't know how to properly control it. I watched it for what seemed like hours, trying to figure out if it was someone needing help or if it even was a person I didn't know. If it was my desperation to try and find him. But the shape of the thing, I could have sworn it looked like Trevor. He is quite round, fat, and stout, and he walks with a hunch on his neck from probably years of poor posture. Now, the silhouette looked so much like him that it was almost certain it was. But as I took a step forward, it suddenly froze, as if I could see me watching it from hundreds of meters away. That was when it dropped back and suddenly disappeared. Now, for days after the blackout, Trevor finally reappeared, but he seemed like an entirely different person. That bubbly, annoying, and loud man we all knew was now morbidly quiet and the distant. We tried to ask him where he was, but all he would say in response was, I had to figure myself out first. What was stranger was his accent. Trevor was from Texas, but now he had this strange Icelandic accent. He was even struggling with his English compared to my London accent. I always joked. He sounded like a hillbilly with an eye for his cousin. But it wasn't as if he had only just learned to speak the language. Even stranger, he started grumbling and gibberish to himself. I soon got suspicious and started secretly recording him. To my surprise, it almost sounded like Icelandic, but not the way we had been taught. It was so grumbled and garbled, I could barely make out what he was saying. I found someone to help me translate. I'm glad I did, because if I hadn't, Well, I didn't know what would have happened to me. Frida would sometimes invite me to her farmhouse for dinner, even long after the tourist session had ended. Her husband didn't speak English, so it was a good opportunity to practice my Icelandic speech. I played the recording to her, but she seemed quiet and confused. Is your friend from Iceland? She asked. No, I replied. He speaks like an old Icelandic man. He sounds a bit like an old person, and his words seem very old. Things even I would call ancient. An old grandpa for saying some of these things, he would say in Icelandic, would be nonsense. But old nonsense, old words, the equivalent of anyone my age saying good heavens or rascals or scallywags. But what was stranger was the random comments he would make. He once slipped on the ice and I asked him if he was all right, and I thought he was just grumbling out of annoyance. But according to Frida, it sounded like he was saying, I forgot this body can fall down. Now, his mother called once, but she just stared wide eyed at his phone until it stopped ringing. He asked me why that hoax was sounding on its own, why that box was sounding on its own. I told him it was his mother calling, probably because she hadn't heard from him in days. But he continued to stare and mumble something along the lines of, a mother, finally. I have been calling for a mother for a many day now. It was very it was very last phrase. Frida translated that what made me decide to leave Iceland for good, never to return. I was once complaining on our walk home about how miserable the dark, sunless winters was making me, but I had Trevor whisper something out of, but I heard Trevor whisper something out of earshot. Through the wind roaring in the background, stained the recording. She could very clearly make out the words that still haunt me to this day. Worry not, we will come for you next. Worry not, we will come for you next. So I left the very next day and I never returned. I hitchhiked a lift with someone who had come to visit for the weekend and was on his way back. The man who was driving was happy to take me as long as I split the cost of fuel, and I told him I would pay for the entire journey if he would leave before dark. I hadn't even packed any bags. We set off just as the streetlights were beginning to come. I looked back as we rode over the mountain pass, and just before the town slowly disappeared in the darkness, the lights faded all at once. And as Iceland, Iceland was plunged into the other blackout. What a scary, frightful tale that was. That definitely sent my bones chilling. Madam Mina, welcome. What do you have in store for us tonight?
Okay. So the first one that I'm starting off with is going to be a short one, and this one is from the Ask Reddit subreddit about the question is, what has convinced you of the paranormal? This first one starts out like this. They say, okay, this happened when I was 6 and I am nearly 50 now, so my memory is a little hazy. I had a friend the same age as me called Kelly. We used to hang out together with the other children who lived in our block and local area. One afternoon, Kelly knocked on my door. I answered, and she asked if I could go to the corner shop with her to get some bananas so that we could make a milkshake. Before I could answer, my stepmother called down the stairs to say that I had to clean my room and that I was not going anywhere. Kelly kind of shrugged and said she was going anyway, and that was the last I saw of her. Early evening came, and her mother had knocked on every door looking for her. All of the dads got together and went looking for her. It got later and later, and when I went to bed, she still had not been found. In the early hours of the morning, I heard a noise outside my bedroom window, a kind of intermittent moaning. When I looked out, I saw a policeman was sat out on the wall sobbing and being comforted by another policeman. I watched for a while and then went downstairs. My dad told me Kelly had been found in the front of our block. I later found out Kelly had been murdered by one of the older boys who hung out with us. I had to give a statement as I had seen Kelly the day before. Later police feedback that Kelly had been killed hours before she knocked on my door, and that my recollection of events was impossible. The man who owned the corner shop said Kelly had never come in to buy bananas. I'm pretty sure the police thought I was lying and that my mother was either lying as well or mistaken about what she had heard. From that time onwards, I have believed that Kelly came to visit one more time before she left for good. And since then, the idea of the paranormal just seemed normal. What do you think about that?
Yes, I love the story. It was very, very frightful. And yes, maybe she did come to visit after she passed away. Which brings us to story number two. But before we get to my second story, I want to give a thanks to everybody here in the chat room who has come to watch and all the Fright fans all over the world who are watching. And this next tale is called The Stage of Hell. They say every tragedy begins with someone laughing. That's how I open my statement. What a way to start a story, folks. This detective gives me a look at the lives of someone between pity and paperwork. The room smells of burnt coffee, old carpet, and that metallic aftertaste you get when blood tries to pass like disinfectant. Amber light hums through the blinds. Dust hangs in the air like applause that forgot to stop. Relax. Just relax, he says. You're not the one on trial. I gave him a short customer service chuckle. You'd be surprised how often I hear that shit. He pressed record. The red lights blink, a tiny accusation. Before the clubs and the crowds, there was a house where we never cried. Mum said tears made ghosts jealous, so we laughed at funerals, at breakups, at bills we couldn't pay. Now you see, I was 5 when my father slept on black. When my father slipped on black ice, Mum stood over him and laughed so hard her voice crackled like the pavement under his head. The sound stitched something in me, a thread of that never stopped vibrating. I learned early that laughter is cheaper than grief. It started, I tell him, it started. It started for sure. Now get ready. The club was called the Giggle Chamber. Bad omen, but a decent bar. Neon sputtered outside, casting red and blue across faces that wanted to forget their day jobs. The walls were painted black, but you could still see the water stains underneath, like old bruises shivering through makeup. The mic smelt of nerves and mint gum. The first night someone cracked a joke about penguins or politicians, that usual shit. The crowd laughed in unison. The crowd laughed in unison. People pleased, kind of laughter that says, "We're fine, honestly." Watch from the bar, nursing a warm beer. When the comedian left the stage, the applause died, but the laughter didn't. It stayed in the room like smoke after a fire, soft at first, barely there. The bartender wiped down glasses and hummed along to it. Though it wasn't the speakers, the manager checked the sound system twice, but I heard it clearly. Underneath everything, a chuckle that didn't belong to anyone. I walked to the stage. Empty now. Just the microphone stand and a stool with a wobbly leg. The laughter seemed to come from the floorboards. Or maybe the walls. I touched the mic. It was warm. Behind the bar hung a yellowing poster from old Comedia Tour. It smelled pent. Fear and force share a punchline in small print. Fear and force share a punchline. I used to think it was clever marketing now. I think it was a warning. Maybe the beer and the drunkenness was overpowering my thoughts. You see, the detective tilts his pen. You're saying laughter spread? I'm saying it evolved. Then, a week later, I was back on stage. Different crowd, some hunger for distraction. I told a story about my mother, about black eyes and cracked voices. They laughed nervously at first, unsure if it was allowed. The harder and then too hard. A woman in the third row couldn't stop. Her friends patted her on the back, handling her water. She doubled over, gasping between convulsions. The laughter twisted into something else, something wet. She slid off her chair, secretly carried her out, still giggling, tears streaming down her face. And the rest of the audience watched frozen. Then someone in the back started laughing. Then others, and then another. Within seconds, the whole room was laughing, not at my jokes, but at her. I stood on the stage and felt it, the hum beneath the sound, the nervousness. It smelled of static and perfume testers, panic dressed in polite clothes. Then a man kneeled over the mic. A man kneeled over mid chuckle at the 6 o'clock news 2 days later. His chest still jolted with the paramedics zipped the bag. I smiled along when I saw it online. You have to silence to get you noticed. You have to silence gets you noticed. Didn't that strike you as odd? Let's try that again. You have to. Silence gets you noticed. Everything's normal. It is popular. Then come the laughter. It traveled quicker than a rumor. People caught it on buses. It lifts during moments of silence. So seemingly, a stranger's grin could expand your lungs. The media, in argument, called it the joy plague. Couldn't Couples who didn't speak in months started wheezing together. Some posted it pictures of it, then waited for lies, then waited for likes that never come, while the chuckles kept going. Teachers collapsed mid-lesson. Students smirked in the surprising silence. A funeral went viral for when the past when the priest slipped on wet grass. The mourners clapped for the 5 seconds straight. The mayor live streamed himself laughing for 6 minutes when she finally gasped, "Please stop recording." No one did. The detective folds his arms. "And you, did you catch it?" "I was born with it." He frowns. "What kind?" "The quiet one, the sort that looks like control, the one grief wears to work." He hesitates. The tops hums. "I call it the silent laugh. It sounds like relief, feels like drawing. It's what happens when a scream learns more." "I call it the silent laugh. It sounds like relief, feels like drowning. It's what happens when a scream learns manners." So I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time since we started, my hands are shaking. I press them flat against the table, but they won't stop. There's a moment right after the laughter dies when your body forgets who it belongs to. Your lungs still remember the rhythm, your heart doesn't. That's where I live, in that pause. The detective watches my hands. I pull them back into my lap. He says nothing good. Silence is the only honest audience. He slides photographs across the table, mouth open mid laugh. Eyes all wrong. "Recognize anyone?" I point. "That's the chuckle, blue jacket. That's the nerves on. See, that's the nerves. See her hands? And then that's the one from over there, the century form. We ran facial recognition," he says. "There's only one person in every photo." I smile, but it takes effort this time. "You didn't say. You were on stage." "I was, so were they." He closes the folder. 48 dead. 48 set free. That's not funny. Neither was the laughter. A twitch flickers at his mouth. A single chuckle escapes. The mirror breathes back, the sound stretching it. He touches his throat, a touch too late. "You shouldn't laugh in small rooms," I whisper. "They say that tape corrupted there." The laughter distorted into something liquid, and underneath was a whisper, "Help me, help me." The report calls it mass hysteria. Illness. TikTok calls me the laughing man of Black M. I call it feedback, the viral kind. They move me to isolation where guards wear headphones. They play rain. Doctors hum children's songs as they walk the corridor, and yet still their shoulders shake. They always pretend it's a cough. "You want truth?" They were all mine, every single one. The chuckles opened the door. The nerves filled the crowds. The contagious made sure everyone heard the silent waited underneath them all. It wasn't joy. It was need. A plea for someone to listen to grief without remixing it as comedy. Behind my eyes, scenes replay in wandering visions, moonlit confessions, rooms shifting walls. They never end, but change sets each episode. You'd like the detective. You'd like them, detective. They're dark and funny. They send a new interpreter, young, fresh, the sort who still believes empathy is sterile. He brings tea. He won't drink. "Do you feel nervous?" Of course, every time somebody laughs, I hear it. He stops the recorder. "Then what do you want?" I lean close enough for my breath to fog the glass, to hear silence again. He laughs, a reflex, a habit, then catches himself and leaves. The light flickers, amber, then white. White dust floods like ghosts taking their uh, unwelcome bows. I open my mouth, but no sounds comes. Someone laughs. Some laughs are better left unheard. The footage ends here. Well, that certainly was a very strange story to tell. Now let's see what Madame Mina has in store for us next.
So this story is posted in the Ask Reddit subreddit, and this one starts off saying, "My childhood home is haunted. Where my house is, there used to be another house. It burned down, and the father of the family who lived there died in the basement during the fire. The family sold the land, and the house was cleared away, and a new house built over the old basement. My grandmother, who lives in the same town, knows the family. Anyway, my parents bought the new house when I was a toddler, and we lived there for about 20 years. The ghost of the guy who died in the fire, named Charlie, lives in our house, and it's pretty obvious. My mom says that once she and my dad were arguing, she took to the bedroom to cool off. She said, 'Charlie, I wish you could knock some sense into him.' Not 5 minutes later, my dad starts swearing from the living room. The shelves above his chair had fallen and knocked him in the head. They've never fallen before or since. Any animal we have, a couple of dogs when I was a kid, my cat now, will stare down the hallway for long stretches of time, then go bananas chasing something from the living room at the at one end to the bedrooms at the other, like they're playing with someone. I personally have heard footsteps, big, heavy footsteps, like someone wearing work boots, walk up and down the hallway, especially at night. It scared me as a kid, but now I just take it as Charlie checking on our safety. My grandmother, while visiting us one time, woke up in the guest bedroom to a shadow man standing in the doorway. She hid under the blanket for a few minutes, then decided it was safe. When she came out of the blanket, the shadow man was at her bedside, leaning over her. She hid under the blanket again until she fell asleep. One
All
second.
right.
Wait, I'm not sorry, I'm not done. Sorry. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, I guess you can go ahead. I accidentally exited out of it.
That is okay, Madam Mina. We'll move on to our next tale. And first, I want to thank everybody who's in the chat and those watching all around. As crazy as my last tale was, this next story should make up for the weirdness of the laughter we just heard recently. And we got people in the chat saying hello. Hello and welcome to the Fright Files. This next tale is probably going to be one that you will not be able to sleep or handle. Because you see, there are creatures known as the glowing yellow eyes. The glowing yellow eyes. You see, it loomed over her face. Its face was twisted in a snore. You're nothing, you know, it whispers. A nobody, a waste of space, a burden. Her chest arched and she curled up tighter, longing to disappear, to have the pain finally swallow her whole instead of destroying her in polite bite-sized pieces. A silver of moonlight peeked through the navy black out curtains, illuminating its spasmodic movements instead. She squeezed her eyes shut. What are you waiting for? Its voice inhabited the no man's land between enticing and revolting, both pulling her in and pushing her away. I can't, she responded, her voice barely audible. Oh, my dear, but you can, and you would, if you only cared about anyone around you. Now a cold chill shook her already weak and aching body. Despite the layers of blankets, her body continued to shiver. She felt it glide around the room. The voice continued, after all, what good are you doing? The world turns without you. In fact, it thrives without you. You're depleting valuable resources with no return or investments. It's a shame, of course, but this is merely a practical decision. Take the emotion out of it. Now its speech was familiar, rehearsed. It was one she heard all too many times, too many nights. When other children were being rocked to sleep in their parents' arms or read a short story to fill their dreams with the fantastic characters and creatures, she was in her dark room alone with it. The first night it had crept out of her closet, a tiny, insignificant thing, and crawled into her small daybed, where she sobbed pitiful, gut wrenching sobs that shook her tiny body as she tossed and turned among her blankets and skinny little sheets clutching her shoulders to hold herself together. Now, against their emotions, they were far too big for her tiny body to handle alone. Hello there, it had sitting cross legged on the bed next to her. Hello. You know who I am, don't you? You know who I am, huh? She had nodded. She couldn't have said what it was, but couldn't put it into words. Even now, something inside her told her that it was somehow a part of her. Good, don't worry. I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. It settled in the maintaining. It settled in, maintaining its distance to avoid any contact. She remembered reaching out to a tiny hand, desperate for anything to hold it. She stuck her hand out, but it reached away for her touch. It was too far away. No, you don't touch me. Its voice snapped from soft to harsh instantly, and she recalled the tears falling harder and faster as her stomach threatened to throw up the macaroni cheese she had for dinner. There, 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 child, it whispered, its voice changing in timbre only. I may not be a soft teddy bear or a friendly pet, but unlike those, you never have to worry about me getting lost or running away. I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. I will be your one and only true companion for life. When her eyelids finally began drooling with pure exhaustion, the last thing she remembered before entering a nightmare fueled dream was its glowing yellow eyes, vigilantly keeping watch over her small form. Now, nearly 30 years later, it has grown with her. What started out as a small thing, barely the size of one of her dolls, now filled her room. It still sat on her bed, crunching itself into a smaller form, and most nights the last thing she saw was those glowing yellow eyes. It hid sometimes, mostly when someone else would spend the night, as if whatever room she was in could only hold her, and it had another body even if asleep, chipped their precious occupancy. Her her 20s had been full of one night stands and sleepovers because of this. It had worked temporarily, but soon learned that what she couldn't but what she soon learned that when she couldn't find a Tinder hookup or a blind date, it returned harder, faster, and angrier than before, as if pushing her, keeping her away. It screamed and revolted, destroying any fragile thing she had. Scaffolding she had painstakingly built it. The aftermath ensued. Only relationships was short lived when she finally gave up trying to use someone else as a buffer. It calmed its taunts, shifted from violent and jorting to in. She didn't see the true danger of familiarity and comfort until it was too late. Instead of working up bruised and bleeding, she never slept. Instead of the fights, violent and terrifying as they were, there was just nothing, just a resignation. She let it take over her life, settling into the isolation it required without realization. She had accepted that this was that she accepted that there was no life free of it. This would be her reality until she finally listened. Aren't you oh so tired? Don't you know you can fix everything right now? It would be so easy. Just an uncomfortable moment. That it too save you from all of this. Its gesture towards moonlight, everything out there, all the horror, all the pain, all the tragedy. On the solitary tear dipped. One solitary tear dripped on the stained pillowcase. It gestured towards her, this time still maintaining the familiar physical distance, and everything in there. No shame, no more, no more fear, no more tears. How long are we going to play this game now? It's been decades, far too long. Enough for you to realize this will never change each and every night, just like this until your body finally gives out. Your last moments, nothing but anguish, but this time you can control it. Her pleas had run dry years ago. She had done all the mental gymnastics, lied to it, lied to herself, dealt with consequences of its constant presence, finding breakups, evictions, hallucinations, hospitalizations, debt. It took everything in her to keep her nose above the never ending icy stream, let alone pull herself up onto the blank onto the banks. She had always been able to block them before, usually by drinking until she passed out, but this time they were fiercer. They twisted and pried until her sobs were no longer silent, and the air filled with hoarse cries. It came closer, closer than it had ever been before, and its breath rustled her hair. You can feel me. It's time. She tried to reply to deny this, but all that came out was a gargled sob. Yes, yes, you can. You know it. You spent your entire life trying to pretend I didn't exist, trying to block me out, but I'm here. I've always been here, and I always will be here. You know that I'm here to help you, to res to rescue you, That's all. It's the right thing. Believe me. Think of your family and how much you burden them. A difficult child, disobedient, selfish, ungrateful, a failure. Can't you see the relief in their eyes? Or your work. Make things easy on them. No more. No more. Now your friends, you know they've just been putting you on. They've just been putting up with you because they pity you. Free them. Let them accept that you were always a lost cause and stop wasting your time. You've been right here all along. They hate you. They always hated you. You've been doing them a favor. You're doing them quite a favor. Her resolve stayed with her. It was holding something out to her, but her tears kept it undefiable. Now, folks, this story ends with a very strange way. You see, as she drifted off, her death became more and more prevalent. He began to drain every ounce of energy she had inside of her. His glowing yellow eyes, day by day, weakened her body, weakened her down to almost nothing. A strange, garbled combination, a strange laughter as he watched her deteriorate, almost to the point of no return. She pulled the blankets up to her chin that night one last time. It was so simple, so easy, so different. She didn't know that there would be no tomorrow. And as her eyelids began to drop and the breathing swallowed, this was the end of it all. And as the yellow eyes looked at her, they had taken her soul. What a strange story that was, and the most frightful tale of all. Adamina, do you have another story for us?
Yes, this was posted in the subreddit r/paranormal encounters, and it's posted by unhappy underscore service underscore 7552. The title is Am I Crazy? No one believes me, but I experienced this and a second person with whom we tried to wrap our heads around, but gave up and agreed it's the creepiest crap we've ever experienced. In 2004 to 2006, my summer job was working at a small cabin resort in the Rocky Mountains. The first year, I met another kid, Mickey, my age, whose family would come stay every summer. 2006, my summer before senior year, I buckled down and worked the first weekend I could. I made an agreement with the owners to stay for a few weeks and help with renovation and tree cutting. After about a week, my now friend showed up with his family and expected other guests and family to arrive the following few days. After a week, the majority of the family left, but Mickey decided to stay since he had driven there on his own. One night we were drinking and smoking, and I decided to crash out early, and Mickey stays up probably a few hours. I then wake up to talking and wonder if it's the owner, a family member who hadn't left yet, or another guest staying in another cabin. Nope. It's a guy dressed like Jesus, tattered robe and a decorated walking stick, but a survivalist slash mountain man demeanor. I come out and we talk for a while, and he tells us that he's been hiking the Continental Divide from Canada south for the last 6 years, in and out of town, slowly working his way to Arizona eventually. I was a dumb kid that did a lot of drugs offered to me. This guy pulls out a stone carved pipe and starts packing it with some kind of plant slash shisha slash opium looking finger pinch. I've done salvia, peyote, acid, shrooms, synthetics, and I have never experienced this state of mind ever. Here's the reason I'm typing any of this. It's still as vivid as when it happened, and the next day, and the next. About 2 minutes after taking a hit, I go to grab a cigarette, and it immediately pops in my mouth. I stuttered and noticed something was off. I'm like, oh yeah, I just hit that pipe. LOL. I go grab my lighter from my pocket, and now it's floating. Okay, I'm tripping. I'm laying back. As I started to lean back, I see this man standing over Mickey. As the wobbles slash warbling sounds of the fire and him chanting something fade to black, I wake up and both of them are gone. My first thought is water. I go right back in the cabin, maybe 20 steps away, and grab my water. As I'm chugging, I realize I need to see what time it is. A few minutes after 3 a.m., I walk back outside and it comes right back, hitting the pipe, Mickey, and the sky. I grab my flashlight and I start scanning the trees. There are multiple cabins spread out, but as a worker slash grounds crew, I couldn't be yelling, was my thought. I decided to walk up this small bridge. Oh, I decided to walk up to the small bridge that connects the camp and the main road over the river. At this point, I'm sober enough to start getting worried and creeped out. My flashlight ahead of me, I approach the bridge to see this man standing at the rails and Mickey right above him, staring out at the river, looking like he's gonna jump. I yell immediately, what the heck are you doing? The man looks at me with the fastest head move and eye lock. It was probably the flashlight and my adrenaline, but his eyes looked blood red, like the infected from 28 days slash years later. He looks right back at Mickey and turns and then just runs off. I can hear the rocks slash dirt crunch from the road, then trees rustle and twigs break on the other side of the bridge. He bolted into the thick woods and a huge hill without any stopping. Never saw him again. Mickey, now standing at the top of the bridge rail, about 5 feet up, starts screaming. I say, Mickey, WTF is happening? And the look on his face as he looks to me is the most scared I've seen someone, aside from a horrible war survivor videos online slash death. He climbs down and cries so hard in my shoulder as we walk back. I barely knew him, aside from the random stuff we'd chat about as high school boys, but it was it was a moment that I strangely enjoyed looking back. Um, it was a moment. Oh, we didn't sleep at all that night, and we kept trying to piece together what happened, what I just typed. I don't know what is the stuff we smoked. What this man did was doing to us, but I'm sure we weren't the first people he had done this to. Cut to what Mickey told me the next day. As I crashed out, he tended the fire and decided to go grab his jacket and another beer. He comes back, and there's this man standing at the fire. He thought it was me, or sounded like me, until he got closer. Creepy, but okay. After a bit of asking slash chatting with this man. He tells Mickey that he's been looking for Eden and wants to start a new Holy Land. Weird, but okay. I don't remember what else, but definitely nut job talk for a while. That's when I woke back up. Mickey remembered us hitting the pipe and seeing me lay back for a brief moment, but then snap right back up. Like a blackout drunk, I have no memory of it. But Mickey said we sat there by the fire as the sky starts to chant weird sayings. He said it literally sounded like gibberish, but the closest thing would be that alien clicking in signs, or how you a cat, but satanic and dark. He then blacked out and woke up staring at dark, raging river water, and the worst feeling of dread I can only imagine, like sleepwalking, but you wake up on the edge of a bridge with death and horrible injuries below. I've ran this through my head so many times, and all I can say is be good, people. There's so much horror out there, but also so much beauty. Answers or questions welcome. Well, that was definitely interesting, to say the least.
Yes, it was, Madam Eva. And we have somebody in the chat room wanting to know what this show is about. This is the Fright Files with Chris Harmon, Dr. Fright, and Madam Mia. And we tell frightful stories each week. These stories are from first-hand witnesses, Bigfoot encounters, UFO encounters, and everything in between. Just to give you an example of what you can expect with Dr. Fright and Madam Mia, we ask every person before we begin if they feel like they can handle and survive till the end. And this next story might prove what we are discussing. You see, about 1 p.m., Joseph was riding their horses when the horses suddenly kicked as a strange scent filled the air. The men spotted a furry creature. The men spotted a furry creature, a being on two legs, about 100 feet away. The two men dismounted, and Patterson used his trusty Kodak camera to capture the beast on 16 millimeter film. Ever since Patterson and ever since Patterson and uh, you have pop-ups coming up on our computer screen here. I apologize, folks. But ever since Patterson and Gremlin's encounter, they began to wonder if it was Bigfoot. Bigfoot encounters are wide all over the United States. They seem to be happening everywhere. And skeptics have argued that because Patterson so thoughtfully, we have pop-ups coming up here. I apologize, folks. We're going to move on to our last story of the evening. As we begin, I call this story The Sanctuary Shadows. Megan didn't even know she was being watched as she lingered in the entryway, tugging at the skirt of her orange mint club dress. She waved through the ruckus crowd, unaware of the eyes following her, observing her side on the spindle on the back stool. They watched as she trembled through her fingers on the surface of the bar, mindful of the bartender preparing the drinks that had just been ordered. After taking a sip from the sizzle stick, she gave the bartender a thumbs up and rooted on her seat to survey the energy in the room. Her lips curled in a smile as she sat up a little straighter when she noticed a young woman, fast approaching. When the woman glanced past her, raising her hand to get the bartender's attention, Megan quickly moved her eyes and spun around backwards. A picture of kamikaze woman shouted over the bartender as she squeezed between Megan and the man sitting next to her. She glanced down at Megan and then back at the bartender. I said a picture. She emphasized the word picture. The bartender grabbed the empty pitcher and shook it towards the woman. Leaning down, the woman whipped into Megan's ear and whispered, "Some people don't give a sense of humor." When she stood back up, she said, "I'm Dana. Nice to meet you, Megan. It looks like you're drinking the same as my friend, and if your date doesn't show why you if your date doesn't show up, why don't you join us? We're right over there." "Oh, I'm on my own tonight." Dana grabbed the full pitcher off the bar and with a flick of her hand noticed Megan to follow, motioned for Megan to follow. Megan sighed when she heard the text notification. If it's urgent, they'll call. She thought she slumped into the folding lawn chair and glanced past the bar stool on the far side of the deck. The glowing moon over the silhouetted mountains was magnificent. A hazy aura surrounded the brilliant white orb. Closing her eyes, she gave herself a little push with the balls of her feet and took a deep, satisfying breath. The smell of the air that night was clean, unlike the daytime when the odors were enhanced by the backing sun. Moments later, the song "Witchy Woman" by the Eagles streamed through the open window. Her eyelids fluttered and opened as she roared to her feet. She lunged the screen door and flung into the open, marching into the kitchen and snatching her call. "Hello. Hey, Megan." It was Will, one of the cuties she was introduced to at the tavern the other night. He was inviting her to a naked swim. He suggested put a he suggested put a damper on her initial impression of the guy and a sudden feeling of trepidation flooding her body. Her cheeks flushed, skinny dipping. "Yeah," Will said. "Me and Dana and Chuck are meeting at the Quest in 30 minutes. Hmm. Megan was speechless. She had only met the friends a few days ago. Will broke the awkward silence. "Come on," he urged. "It's Friday night. You can wear a swimsuit if you want." Then, in a sing-song way, he chanted, "Girls just want to have fun, right? I didn't think the buses are running at this late and time of night. No problem. I can pick you up in 10 minutes." Another awkward silence. Megan was rarely impulsive, but one of the reasons she moved to Sanctuary was to leave her boring, guarded life behind. She started she stared through the window over the kitchen sink at the full moon hovering in the sky. The mist that accompanied it suggested that she should take advantage of this opportunity for self improvement. Going to the nightclub alone was only the beginning. Besides, Dana and Chuck would also be there. "Make it 15," she replied. "Awesome. See you soon." And the call disconnected. She sat her phone back down in the kitchen counter, then scurried to the laundry room and wiggled into her bathing suit. A pair of sweatpants lay on top of a small pile of worn jeans. She tugged them and grabbed a folded down towel from the shelf above the utility sink, then yanked the elastic band from her ponytail and wrapped her fingers through her raven locks. And a horn blared outside. On her way to the door, she grabbed her cell phone and shoved it into the back pocket of her sweats, sliding in her flat top flops before wrenching the door open. Hey, girl, yelled Will from his beat up WWV next to the curb. Do you have an extra towel I can borrow? Megan let go of the doorknob and threw up her hand in an I'll be right back. On her way through the kitchen, she paused, let her own towel unfurl, and looped it around her neck. From one of the cupboards, she withdrew an unopened bag of garlic chips. Intending to take them with her, she tossed the bag onto the counter. It burst open with a loud pop, spiraling, swirling chips everywhere across the countertop. She grunted and rolled her eyes. In the window, she saw a pair of solid black eyes glowing back at her. She realized those eyes looked more like the silhouette of a creature. And as that creature got closer and closer to the window, she hurled down on her knees, trying to escape, trying to hide, as she knew it was coming for her. Somehow she received the message that it was looking for her, coming for her. As she hurried into the bathroom, she shut and locked the door. She could hear the creature hissing and hissing as it got closer and closer and closer. Then, all of a sudden, as the creature got quiet, she heard the footsteps on the floor slightly thump, 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 thump. The creature was walking and pacing around the room. She received a message to come out. I want to see you. As she stayed hidden underneath the bathroom sink, she could hear the footsteps getting closer and closer to the door. As her eyes began to close, and she began to pray a silent prayer, hoping the creature would leave her alone. And then the prayers were answered. Everything got silent. As she opened the door, slowly the room began to get clear. The sound was quiet. Everything was quiet. And as she looked outside, as she looked outside through the window of the front door, she could see the creature walking away into the forest behind the house, into the forest in the front of the house. She knew that this was not the end. She had a message in her mind that he would be back. He would be coming back for her. And as she began to close the window curtain, she heard the final words, I will return on the next moonlight. We hope you have enjoyed these frightful tales here tonight. And as I welcome Madam Mina back to the stage, I hope that everybody's had a frightful time here tonight. We will be back Monday with all new tales of the Fright Files. Dr. Fright and Madam Mina wish you a very good night and a very frightful evening. Stay frightful. And thanks for watching the Fright Files. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room here tonight, everybody watching all over. We hope you have enjoyed tonight's stories. Thanks for watching the Fright Files.